Hello, today I would like to talk about terrain and economy in Emperors of the Fading Suns, with help of the guide made by VDmitry you can see right now. But before I go to the guide, I want to point out that recently there was an update which added a really nice quality of life feature. That being, you can now see what unit is produced in a city and how long it will take until that production is done. So really nice. I think that's pretty much the most important thing in the most recent update. And now to the first thing in the guide, terrain types and movements. So the game doesn't really tell you much about this, how many movement points will be used up when you try to move somewhere. Of course, you can see a prediction of how far you can go, but that makes it difficult to plan long-term paths, how it will actually take before you arrive to your destination. Movement on a road, of course, in cities costs a single movement point, but then with other terrain types this gets a bit harder, especially when you consider that there are also different bonuses. So for example, infantry will typically will use up less movement points when moving to those difficult terrains, while vehicles, well, they have more movement points, they will need to use more to go to this terrain. Planes, of course, are not subject to this. They only use one movement point, and they are only limited by the fact that they will need to refuel in 2 turns, otherwise they will fall out of the sky. And something similar happens with ships too, when they try to move through rivers compared to regular ocean tiles. Next, economy. Here, two important resources you should really pay attention to is energy and trace, at least from the starting resources, because energy will limit how many manufacturing cities you can build. So all 7 you see here will require energy, of course, and trace is required to basically begin any production chain. So it is also required in large quantities, and it's a bigger problem because at least with energy you can get a lot of it from water, and wells are the only city you can build on water, so they don't really compete. But trace may often compete with other resources, so make sure that you're not accidentally blocking some other resources while you're trying to get another different resource type. Of course, if you need to, you can raise a city with an engineer, but still. So yeah, the trace can be very problematic and you will need a lot of it, and as the name implies, it's trace, there isn't really a lot of it, so getting can be hard. There are of course special deposits, always worth to get those. In most cases they get 20 resources, in Exotica and Singularity only 10, in Exotica it's 10, in Gems it's only 5. But on the other hand, those resources are very important, they are pretty much entirely blocking an entire production line. Without Exotica you cannot produce biochem, which will eventually lead to wetware, and without Gems you cannot make Singularities. So yeah, very important resources to get there. And again, once more, the trace will be required, a lot of it, and you will need it, trust me. Now with money, it's quite simple really. You will need it for paying maintenance. If you can't pay up, you will start to lose loyalty on those units that you cannot pay. And you also need to train some units like engineers, officers and spies, quite a lot of in fact. And of course you can also use it in diplomatic negotiations and when trading. And yeah, most of their income will come from taxes. So as you expand and build more cities, it will naturally increase. Before that, you may need to dabble into a bit of trade. It can also help, of course, if you have bonuses to your loyalty, because with loyalty, production and such increase. So again, important considerations. As I said, fuel, it's needed for all the manufacturing. The deposits dictate how much singularities you can produce. Similar Exotica, I already told that. Yeah, but the trace is really the most limiting one. And depending on the planet type it is, it can change what resources you need. Like for example, I'm currently on a barren planet, most of my cities are, and so I don't really have that much problem with trace at the moment, although I'm also in, let's say, a regame right now. But I am really lacking food, although that's slowly changing. And again, with food at least, you eventually get arboreums, which you can use to get even more food. And again, if you want to change your farms into arboreums, you will need to use an engineer to raise them and then build arboreum in its place. And with trading with the League, one thing is worth noting that manufactured resources are often just not worth it. It's better to just sell the basic ones, with the exceptions of monopoles. And of course, don't forget, when you're trading with the League, don't go too much into it until they may get too strong and you will have to deal with them yourself. I think that's all. If you think I missed something or maybe I made a mistake, let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more, like and subscribe. Bye.